right. Hi, guys. Welcome back. This is Val Montgomery. I am here with Ron, and we are about to start and kick off letter number 3.
Joining again. We're going to bring up something we discussed about earlier that really bears repeating, and this is really, really important. And then, I'm using from my format, of course, the structure that Christ gave us in these letters. And in letter 3, right at the beginning, he says, you must say this repeatedly because it's so ingrained in our psyche, in our way of life, the dogma of the whatever religion we are currently subscribed to. We need to break away from that. And the only way to do that is truly understand the truth of existence, which is that our entire world, our bodies, everything is made up of the same particles. We discussed this before. Whatever makes the chair you're sitting on, the food that goes in your stomach, our own bodies, the planets, everything all is protons and electrons, and it all comes together in different forms to put us together. And we are so intrinsically embedded with the truth of the world, the way things are, the truth of existence, that we do have the power to change things, just like Christ did when he was on this earth. It's really an amazing thing here, and it all is going to happen through a shift of consciousness. So Christ says that, don't expect God to save you. Don't expect Jesus to save you. So many people say, Jesus, save me. Jesus, help me. He's out there, but we have to help ourselves. He can't intervene in our lives to the point where he makes things happen for us. We make things happen. He's there right behind us. And we're going to go into that today, explaining how that, we either fall in line or we fall away. And it's
wow.
very important.
I like what you said there, Ron. Either we fall in line or we fall away. And that is the true behavior characteristics of people that have fallen on the wayside, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
One bad decision and you just keep repeating that over and over again, as opposed to saying, wait a second, I messed up, let me regroup. They just keep drinking and drinking.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, so I totally get that. Yes.
Sure. And it says right here, God, Allah, Yahweh, Muhammad, Christ, Buddha, none of them save us. Okay. It's an ignorance of facts of our existence if we expect some magical being in the sky who really doesn't exist in that form to come out and be able to change our lives for us. The change is internal here. No matter what our belief is, as far as the salvation from sin, it's a human fallacy. The law of cause and effect is an imponderable and intrinsic, inherently natural characterization of our existence. We can't divorce the effects of causation. Furthermore, what man's belief is regarding to salvation from sins is a human fallacy. There is no main judge in the sky that's going to condemn us to hell. Bad things will happen. Good things will happen. We make our own world around us. There are negative spirits that are out there we can choose to follow or not. It is our own choice, our own ego that affects the choice in our own lives.
So Ron, how do you prescribe, suggest, I've been drinking and I've created this bad habit, right? And sometimes I don't know how to stop it. It's almost easier, to drink a little bit more to kill the hangover. And I think that's what a lot of people face, is that how do I regroup? How do I get back to where I need to be? If that makes sense.
Well, let's talk about when you pray for forgiveness. It's good to pray. Okay. There is, ascended masters, angels, and all there is, of course, on the other side, but they don't affect our lives like that. So if we are in a trap, if we are there, we need, it might be through a helping hand, or we need to find the way, whatever works for us, to move beyond that. Well, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit into what I was going to talk about, but when Christ gave the parable about dividing the sheep, the lambs, and the sheep and the goats, He says, the sheep are there, they follow along and they, follow the master and they're taken care of, right? So of course everybody would like to be a lamb, you stay out of trouble that way, but sometimes something catches your eye. And, if case in the parable, lamb might fall in a hole. Well, the shepherd's going to stop whatever he's doing and go back and pick him up. And that's in the Gospels, and that's very, very true in our lives. Then you have the goats who are just jumping around and eating everything in sight and don't care what they throw in their stomachs, how they behave, or anything like that. Um, does that mean God doesn't love them?
Of course
It's
not.
not.
Mhm.
It's what they choose. It's their mannerisms, and I guess you hate to characterize people, but some people behave more like a goat than a lamb at times, and their choice, and that's their calling in this time. Doesn't mean they can't change or they won't change at some point in time, though.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I totally agree with that. It's I'm at a point now in my life where it's so easy for me to let that tailgater, that lady trying to get one car ahead of me, go around me. And I have nothing to say. Knock yourself out. Do you? I'm just in a more relaxed driving state at that moment. You know what I'm saying? So I totally get that.
Yeah, and something else to think about too, getting back to the fundamentals of creation. Uh, who of us, when we were a little kid, didn't have a pair of magnets we played with? Or maybe I was weird, but I was always fascinated by magnets. There
You
were a
are a
lot of games
science
and things
guy, though,
like that.
Ron.
True, very true. But have you ever played with a magnet, Val?
Yes, I am a magnet girl. Yes.
Okay. Whether you put it on the refrigerator or whatever, you try to put them down next to each other and they either stick together or they jump apart, right?
Right, right.
Okay. That's the same thing. That is so intrinsically part of our own bodies, our own lives, our own way of thinking that Christ keeps coming back to that and saying that, this is really what it all comes down to. It's the electromagnetism. And it's whether it be physically with a pair of magnets or how we interact with other people or how we interact with ourselves. Uh, we can attract positivity or we can repel it both ways. And,
So Ron, what if I feel like I'm attracting drinking? I'm attracting negative people. I'm attracting the gossip group at work. I mean, how do I rationalize that? You know?
well,
Does that
it's
mean I'm a gossip
oversimplification.
person myself?
It's oversimplification, but you need to walk away. Uh,
True, true.
I did visit a medium here several years ago, and I only knew stories of my paternal grandfather. And apparently, he was a blinding drunk. He came to this country, never learned the language. He was kicked around, made fun of, and as a result, he was an alcoholic and a very, very nasty, abusive person. Nobody liked him. When he passed away, my father and his brothers destroyed every shred of paper that they could find on him to show that he didn't exist. The only thing anyone has ever been able to find is when he came over on the boat and he applied for the draft, he was rejected because he was such a nasty guy.
Mhm.
So here's somebody that was, in life like there. So I was curiosity factor. I never knew the man, knew very little of him. And I
Mhm.
asked this medium to try to find out where he was at. And lo and behold, he was he had never fully crossed over. He was so
Wow.
entrapped by the drinking and then the bad behaviors that he wasn't able to go to the light. He didn't
Right,
think he
right.
was, and she found him, and he was inhabiting along with influencing other drunks. That's what he knew. So he went and found some people who were kind of tied to the liquor, and he was just feeding off of their energy, whatever little bit they had,
Mhm.
and keeping them in that same dark hole.
Wow.
I thought that was pretty, wow, what a legacy, right? But she also asked Archangel Michael to go visit him and ask him if he would like to cross over. And apparently he was very fearful when he
Mhm.
was approached. And he was so entrapped with what he'd been doing all these years. Didn't really. He's kind of like he, shrugged away, and you might see somebody who has been kept in a cage in a movie, how they were very fearful and ran
Mhm.
away. But then, as he was approached several times, he really, but he didn't really believe, and eventually, uh, Michael was able to convince him to come on over the light. And I have, he's there now. Um, I think looking at his life story, he's got a long way to go, a lot of things to think about.
Right.
There was, an afterlife story of somebody converting, but it can happen in this life too, and people do it every day. And I think we know it's not easy.
So, so you're saying, Ron, that there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity for wherever I am at in my life, you know, I can turn it around. You know what I'm saying? Though, like, and I say that with optimism because I know people feel sometimes hopeless. You know, I know people feel where, you know, I burnt the house down. Ain't no turning back from that, you know, but there is, you know, there is a way to go back from anything, you know. How do they get there? You know, it you just say one day at a time, one
It's,
step at a
well, ultimately it takes love. Uh,
time.
Another part of the articles here, Christ told the story of when he was being nailed on the cross. He doesn't dwell much on it because, as he says, it happened, they put him to death and it was done, right?
Right.
Uh, but one story he tells in the letters is that when he was being nailed to the cross, he looked at the Roman soldier who was driving the nail and had the hammer in his hand, and
Hmm.
he looked at him with the look of love. And I don't know what is drive, pardon the pun, driving you or compelling you to drive that nail through my hand.
Hmm.
I forgive you. And when that guard looked at him, he said he immediately dropped the hammer, dropped the nail, walked away, and quit.
Wow. Wow.
And I believe that. The forces of love can be extremely powerful, and it's not. I think we talked about this before too. Earthly love is vastly not even in any comparison to spiritual love.
I agree. I
It,
agree with that 100%.
and but what do we know? It's human love. It's butterflies. It's puppy dog stuff.
Hmm.
You commit to marriage. You try to do things there. You love a person. You want to be there for them. That's all part of it. But spiritual love is, what I understand, a bit more remote in distance. And you have compassion and love for everybody. But if somebody stubs their toe, you're not compelled necessarily to go comfort them. It's, you feel bad that it happened to them, and they need to pick themselves up and move on.
Hmm.
Not unlike what you're saying, if somebody's, addicted to alcohol or drugs or whatever, you know, it's probably something that you prescribed in your life plan before you incarnated, and you're working through that. And it's actually a blessed thing that you're uh, experiencing these negative emotions and feelings like that. If life was a bowl of cherries, what would the point be for God to be present in us and coming here and learning anything? There would be nothing to learn, because when we're on the other side, everything is so perfect, so beautiful. It's the desire to experience and get our hands dirty, if you will, to incarnate, that really causes the all there is to grow and help each one of its souls, each one of its angels, grow and experience.
I I have I have a quick story I'm going to share, and then I'll let you read,
Sure.
the topic from the letters, so they'll have the direct wording. But I have an uncle, right, and he was dyslexic. He is dyslexic, and back then in the 70s, 80s, when he's a little bit older than me, but he was older than me enough where when I was in grammar school, he was in high school. And I remember back then, it was a struggle for him to read, right? So he has dealt with his whole life of being stupid, dumb, whatever the names kids or people call you.
Mhm.
So fast forward, right? This is a grown man, 16 years old, hanging out with his friends, rob a liquor store. He goes to jail for 50 years. No gun, no weapon, but that's what they did back then, right?
Wow.
Now he's out of jail. He's an older man, but he wasn't quite old. But he's up there in age, and he still can't read, right?
Okay.
So my question to him, because we went out to eat and we're hanging out, and I go, so, what's going on? He was like, well, um, when you're in jail, you can't ever show weakness. So I never took any classes to get my GED to read because it would show weakness. So one of my goals, I really want to learn how to read. And, I sat with that at the table. I sat with that for a while thinking, you know, you held on to that for 50 years, or how many years you did on good behavior. I don't know the exact number, but he was in there for a long time. My whole life he was there.
Wow.
But and I said to him, I go, well, there are things online. There's things you can do from your cell phone. There's things you can do in the privacy of your own home, because it hit me that maybe his biggest enemy was his ego, you know? And I'm not
Sounds like it.
and I'm not taken away from people with anxiety, embarrassment, phobia, or whatever you have that drives you to hide or not do whatever you need to do. But I just took on that moment that must be really serious for you, because I don't know, I've been through so much in my life that, my life is an open book. I'm not embarrassed about certain things, and I'm not proud of them, but they are who I am. That is who I am. And this is a grown man. And I'm thinking 40, 50 years later, it's in the back of your mind. When I get out, I'm going to learn how to read. When I get out, I'm going to go get help for this issue. And I said to him, I go, dyslexia is very common. Like, this is really doable. Yeah, no, like that. And I can
Mhm.
still see the the whisper in his tone, the don't tell nobody what we're talking about type of mannerism. And the first thing came to my mind was that we can be our own worst enemy, where you can be trapped in your mind, repeating same cycles, thinking or living that same maybe not so positive outlook, and it can hold you back. I'm pretty sure you've done prison time for something you probably didn't or shouldn't have been prison time for, but your ego, your whatever, has held you down. So I guess I say to anybody, if there's something you've been doing that may not be great for who you are or whatever you're in, and I use drugs and alcohol as an example, but I know that there are real problems. I
Mhm.
know that in marriages, people create or do bad things, or maybe you had a fight with your mom years ago and y'all haven't spoke since. Whatever it is, you can change it today. Like, you can start over and go, all right, this is crazy. I don't want to live like this no more. Whatever I was back then, I am not that anymore. And I'm going to pick up starting today and move forward. So I'll let Ron get into our message, but it came upon my heart to share that story because I'm like, there's got to be someone else carrying something for that long. You don't have to carry it, guys. I don't think you should carry it that long. Release ego, release whatever is holding you back from doing whatever it is. And I'm not talking about something big. I'm talking about something small. If you leave the house, my brother-in-law leaves the house to go smoke a cigarette. You know, grown man, but he don't want anybody to know. So go ahead, Ron.
Well, it's incredible that we don't rehearse this because you had such a great lead in for the next thing I was going to say. Uh, there's an example that Christ gives here. He says, "Until you're willing to listen, you will never be filled with the Father love consciousness." And he's going to very brief parable here. He says, and Val, I think you can relate to this because you're a mother and you've probably had this happen in your own life. Imagine a child that's screaming and kicking because he wants ice cream or whatever toy, name it. And all the time he's making all this noise, his father is waiting patiently at the door of his room to show him that he brought him ice cream and fruit.
Wow.
And moms are going to remember times when children have been inconsolable over something and they refuse to listen to what you're trying so hard to tell them. And you have to have the solution waiting for them the moment they stop making noise and they dry their tears.
Mm-hmm.
And Christ says, I can see the travail of people, and they're crying and weeping, for his compassion is boundless. And there's little that he can do until he can penetrate the thongs and chains that are holding us back.
Mhm. Wow. And something that, and guys, these letters were written a very long time ago, and they will relate to whatever you're going through today. So can you just imagine how profound it is that God can have the answer to something right now in the day that you're battling with, or you're thinking about, or you're trying to figure out how to handle something. And when you can just take this letter, work through it, apply it to your life. Oh, I don't want to minimize it, but it is.
It is, as long as in our ego is absolutely essential for our survival. No
Yes.
doubt about it. Christ even
Yes.
says it in the letters. It's also the biggest stumbling block we have to move forward.
It's that thin line, right, Ron?
Definitely. Definitely.
So I'm gonna let Ron close us out with something that you can take away. And again, if you have any comments or questions, mostly comments, and share your story down in the comment below, because remember, our purpose, guys, is we're here to help someone else. And that's why Ron and I do this. So go ahead, Ron.
All right. Well, I'm going to read a paragraph here that I think will sum all this up really, really well. It says, the collective consciousness that's emanating from the world today is miasma of fear, resentment, anger, emotional turbulence, and passionate desires. There's revenge, there's exhaustion, and then yet that's interthreaded with the compassion and determination of certain individuals trying to help raise up the world to a degree of enlightenment. And he can come close to people who call on him and work with them to relieve the distress. But their mindset and beliefs are so strongly imprinted on their brains that his truth cannot reach through. Fill in your drug of choice here, okay? And it doesn't have to be something you inject or ingest. It can be porn. It can be your attitude with workers. It doesn't matter. We all have these things, okay? And the time has not been right until now. And now is approximately 20-ish years ago when these were written, that he, in the light of his spiritual truth, the doctrines in the world that we have today are meaningless, and we must prepare ourselves to be illuminated through the good news coming through these letters.
I love that. All right, guys, if you've made it this far in this video, Ron and I have put together a journal. It's just blank pages. We've taken some of the Christ letters, the different paragraphs, put them in a journal. And if that helps you write down your thoughts, write down your experiences, Ron and I are going to give this to you for free. So Ron has a website, and we will drop a link or something like that on the screen or definitely below. And we want you to have this as a gift from us to you.
Goodbye, everybody. And yeah, visit my website, tarotwithtelic.com. There's a new page on there now that's strictly related to the Christ consciousness, and there's download links for the Christ letters, the Christ articles, which is kind of an abbreviated version, but there's a lot of good different information that we'll go over later in there. And then also the journal that Val was talking about. And it's very, very wonderfully done. Encourage you to check it out and try it out.
Bye, guys.